All right. I think we're good. I don't know how far behind YouTube is. Oh, a little bit. Okay. So we're on like a 10-second delay, maybe. I don't know. I can live with that. Hi guys. Making sure everything's working. You guys can hear me all right, can't you? Turn audio down. Music down just a bit. All right. Yeah, Kate, I tried adding you, but it said your channel never existed. If you go into the YouTube studio for the channel, you might be able to add yourself. Yeah, I don't know why. It's in the settings. I can try and work it out later. But welcome everybody to our first episode of For Nerds by Nerds. Me and Kate had spoken a couple months back. We wanted to build something, kind of a hub of all information for streamers and content creators alike, of information, because it's all kind of spread apart amongst the internet and random places here and there. There's no one place you can go to find good information to improve your streams, to improve your videos, to improve your podcast, all that stuff. And we wanted to help everybody do that. So in this first episode, one of the things I wanted to cover was Voicemeeter, an incredibly underrated program that I think most people should at least attempt to use. At its simplest form, it's incredibly easy, but it has some really advanced features that even the most power users can make use of. 2 PC setups, single PC setups, all that. Voicemeeter is what you see on the screen in front of you. I'll go into setup and everything more in depth, and as far as what you can do a little bit later in the stream. But first, I wanted to talk essentially about what exactly Voicemeeter is. So at its core, Voicemeeter is a mixer, an audio mixer. It takes all your audio channels, mixes them together, gives you controls over volume. And at its simplest form, that's it. So you may ask yourself, is this the wavelink? Not necessarily. Is it the Go XLR? Not necessarily. Do they share similar functions? Yes. The Go XLR does have voice mixing capabilities, but it's also an audio interface and a pretty good sound effects board. Those are two things that Voicemeeter is not. It is not an audio interface. It works with your audio interface, and it doesn't have sound effects built into it. To an extent, it has equalization and stuff like that, but you're not going to get crazy weird voices out of Voicemeeter. You need a secondary program to do that. But when you go to download Voicemeeter at voicemeeter.com, you'll see there's 3 different versions. Let me zoom in a little. You have standard, banana, and potato. Don't ask me why they named them the way they did. It's weird, I know. Standard is extremely basic to the point where I don't really suggest using it. It's so limited to that you'll be missing a lot of features that you would actually anybody would really want. Banana is the next step up. It gets a little more heavy into features. However, what's up, Heights? However, you lose a lot of the stuff that most streamers are going to want, like submixes, being able to control the audio differently in your headset versus what people hear. Can't do that with Banana. I suggest everybody start out with Potato. It's incredibly a bit overpowering right out of the box. It's not user-friendly whatsoever when you first look at it. But if you can learn to use Potato, you can learn to do pretty much anything with Voicemeeter. And what I have on my desktop is Voicemeeter Potato. You can see as I talk, the microphone, my microphone setup. You can see the audio, the meters going up and down, and that's basically what it does. This is a volume slider, so if I turn that down, if I turn it up, I get louder. Pretty basic, right? Not so much. So when you first start up Voicemeeter, you'll be granted with a big red blinking light up here. But since mine's already set up and I'm using it, it's not doing that. What it's going to tell you is that you need to set A1. All of these A's are hardware outputs, like your headphones, if you have speakers, things like that. I have mine set up a little differently because I've been using it for a little while, but for the sake of argument, let's just say A1, you want to set your headphone output, which for me would be WDM, Realtek digital output. And you'll see there's two of them here. WDM, KS, and MME are all audio codecs. Typically, you'll want to be using WDM for anything you do. It has the lowest latency out of them, to where when there's a noise that happens, it registers it as quickly as possible. MME, there's a slight delay in that happening, so you have to adjust the video accordingly. So I don't usually suggest using it. However, sometimes you have to. WDM doesn't always like to work correctly, and you'll hear some staticky stuff here and there. But for most users, it's fine. So when you're setting it up, you'll select WDM and whatever your headphones are plugged into, which for my motherboard is a Realtek. It uses a Realtek chip, so it's the Realtek digital output. I have that set up as A2, but let's say you have speakers also along with your headphones. You'll set those up as A2, whatever plugin you have those plugged into. At that point, the only other thing you will have to do is set your microphone. It does not have to be this far left channel. It can be any one of these channels. These channels are all, excluding these first 5 channels, are all hardware inputs. Things like microphones, guitars. You can have multiple microphones on individual channels, so that makes it great for podcasts. You can mix each individual microphone separately. It's great for musicians because you can have your audio interface for your guitar, if you have a harmonica, if you have any instruments whatsoever, as long as they can be condensed down to 5 separate inputs, you can add them all here and have audio controls completely separate for them. So I like to reserve this far left one for my mic just because it's the furthest one away. I generally don't, it's kind of set it and forget it. I generally don't have to go back and change anything. I just leave it how it is. The other ones I tend to change around a little bit, but whenever you click, you'll see hardware input 3, zoom in, hardware input 3, it says select input device. You just click there and you'll select whatever that device is plugged into. Same rules apply. Generally you choose WDM. MME is an okay fallback, but that does introduce a little bit of latency sometimes. You don't see my microphone in here because I use an audio interface, and plus I've already taken it up on the first slot. There is a way, you can see I have this input labeled as Chrome. All of my audio coming from Google Chrome goes through this channel. The way I was able to do that, because that's software, that's not hardware. The way you're able to do that is through something called virtual cables. Let me pull, I don't know if they have a link on their main website, but also through Voicemeeter, they have something called virtual cables, which I don't see any links on here too. Let me just pull that up. So you can see they have cables A, B, and C and D. And what these do is they will turn your hardware-based inputs into software. And if I'm going a little too fast and you have questions, I will have kind of a question answer session later, so feel free to think about some of these questions and write them down. But those virtual cables will turn these hardware inputs into software. And I'll show you how to assign them to those programs here in a minute. But same thing applies. You've got volume. This IntelliPan is their own feature for giving you kind of equalization for it. It's not a full equalizer. You're never going to get perfect sound out of it, but you can get pretty close. Basically, the way it works, and this is going to make my mic sound a little funny for a little bit, but as you drag this around, you can hear it start to change and affect the bass levels, the high levels, and if you bring it up, you can tend to get an echo. So you get different effects based off of where you're sliding this little square around. I like to do that elsewhere because this isn't a audio modulation software. It doesn't. It's not built to equalize and things like that. It has those features. They're pretty limited. So I try not to do that in here, and I'll show you how I do that later on. But if you do want just minor controls over how much bass is in your voice, adding that bass though, yeah, I bet I got pretty boomy because I already have an equalizer on. But if you want those kind of subtle controls, they are in here. It does have a noise gate and a compressor. Again, they're incredibly limited. If you've ever used a compressor and a noise gate, you know there are multiple controls that you can change with them. Attack, release, the threshold, all that stuff. These are just a number slider, up and down, how much you want it to affect. It is what it is. There is no adjusting it there. Does have a pretty hefty reverb system built into it, but I'm not super familiar with it because I don't use it, but I do know you have a ton of options as far as reverb goes. But we'll save that for another video if we ever go into it. For the purposes of standard streaming, you don't really need it, and you're probably going to use a different reverb somewhere else. It also has a delay. Again, never really use it. And it has an external FX panel, which I could see a lot of musicians using. Most streamers and content creators don't need it. So you can generally, these center dials, you can generally ignore. The compressor and the gate you can try to use, but again, they're pretty limited as far as what they do. The main bulk of each individual input is this section down in here. As you saw, this is your gain slider or your volume slider. These are your audio meters. So the louder you get, the higher it goes. Softer you get, softer it is. It does have a built-in limiter, which a limiter, if you don't know, essentially makes it so if you get above a certain decibel level, it stops it from going too loud. So you can shout without blowing out people's eardrums or without your microphone peaking. So you can still get loud, but you sound loud, but you don't get loud, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to describe, but once you know what it does, it makes total sense. And then you see A1 through A5 and B1 through B3. This is where the magic of Voicemeeter lies. You can select each and every one of these, and these essentially send your audio from that panel to wherever these individual buttons are linked to. And if you remember, A1 is our headset, A2 is our speakers if we have them. So if I wanted to listen to my own microphone, I could click A1. If I wanted through my headset, if I wanted to listen through my speakers, I would click A2. It would send it to the speakers. If you had multiple sets of different speakers, you could set them up through A3 and A5, but generally people have headphones or speakers or both, one of the two. So A1 and A2 are typically all you really need. For more professional setups, you might need a third, fourth, and fifth channel. B1 through B3 are assigned to these outputs over here. I'll get to that in a minute. You also have a mono button. Most microphones are not stereo mics. And if you have a 2-channel audio interface like I do, if you don't have that on, everything tends to come out of, I think, the left channel because I'm only plugged into one. So I like to have mono on so it doesn't sound weird in your ears. Solo will effectively mute every other channel except that one. So all you will hear is that. And mute does exactly what you would think it would do. You couldn't hear that because it was muted. Mute's pretty self-explanatory. But again, this is kind of where the magic lies. All these are, like I said, are inputs, hardware inputs, and some software. These three right here are the main actual software inputs. Whenever you install Voicemeeter, it installs 3 drivers. And they are called Voicemeeter input, Voicemeter auxiliary input, and Voicemeter VIO 3 input. You can see that's exactly what each one of these is named. So let's say you're playing a video game and you assign your microphone or your audio output to go through Voicemeeter input. That means anything through this channel, your microphone will be sent through this channel into that game. So any game using this channel, this controls all the audio. So by setting, probably getting ahead of myself, I typically set this as my default device because I want every single game to come through this channel so I can adjust its audio using this. I use it just like I have labeled: game audio, Discord, and Spotify, because those are the 3 main things I typically use. This is how you can adjust your volume independently: game audio, Discord, and a third, which I use for Spotify. So let's say I'm in Spotify. Actually, I'll use Discord. So you're in your Discord. I set my input device to Voicemeeter aux, output device also Voicemeeter aux. There's a reason I do that. But by putting the output as Voicemeter aux, that means all of the audio from Discord will come through this channel. Now, I said earlier B1 through B3 is important. These are what outputs sound. So you can effectively send your audio any one of 3 different places. I typically have one reserved for game audio, and I did not rename that one, which I was supposed to Discord, and one to my stream. All of my stream audio that you're hearing right now is coming from B3. Stop me if I'm going a little too fast, because I feel like I am. All my stream audio is coming from B3. These are all outputs. These 3 send all of your audio out to individual places. So you can select, I want my microphone to be heard by everybody. I want it to go through the game, because the game has voice chat. I want it to go through Discord, because obviously people in Discord want to hear you. I also want my stream to be able to hear it. So I select all 3 Bs. But let's say I'm listening to music or watching a YouTube video on Google Chrome. I typically want to be able to hear that, but I don't want people in Discord to hear it. So I don't select B2. If I'm talking in game, I don't want them to hear that video playing through my microphone. So I deselect B1. And to get around some DMCA stuff on Twitch, I don't want it playing through on Twitch when I'm streaming. So I deselect B3. So you can play whatever you want in your headphones and nobody else will hear it. That's where the power of Voicemeeter is. It splits your audio to wherever you want it to go. So, how does that apply to these? I want my game audio, because that's what I've labeled this as game audio. All my game audio comes into this channel and it will go into A2, which for me is my headphones, but let's say A1 is your headphones. So go to A1, which is your headphones, in B3, out to my stream. I don't select B2 because if I did, everybody in Discord will hear the game that you're playing. They don't want to hear that. Same thing with B1. You definitely don't want to do that because then it will echo. You'll hear your game not only in your headset, but you'll hear it through the game audio, and it just gets weird. Don't do that. Discord. I want everybody on the stream to hear my Discord, the people that I'm talking to. If I don't want them to hear the people that I'm talking to, I just deselect that, and now only I can hear it, which sometimes is beneficial if you're discussing strategies and stuff and you are afraid of stream snipers. That's a good way to kind of mute it for everybody else, but you can still hear them. Typically, I leave it on though, especially for stuff like co-streams and things like that. Music. If I want you guys to hear the music, I keep B3 selected. And now you can see I have renamed all of these things. There's a very good reason why, not only for organizational sake, but you can see hardware input 3. If I right clicked it, I can name it whatever. And I always hit the wrong button. It's very important that you name these. And the biggest reason is because when you're streaming, you're probably going to want an interface that's a little simpler to read than this giant wall of sliders and knobs. And that's where one of Voicemeeter's newer programs really comes into play. And that is Voicemeeter's Stream View, which for whatever reason is giant on the screen. Stream View is something that Voicemeeter came out, I think, honestly, to kind of combat Wavelink and GoXLR and all that. Stream View is a simplified version of everything you see on here, but without all the fluff. Stream View allows you to just change your mic levels, change your game audio levels, which I don't know. I have these submixes differently, but it's whatever. You can change each one of these independently. You also have all of your outputs down here. So if I wanted to lower the entire stream volume, I could do it from right here. Same with Discord, game audio. And if I wanted to lower my headphone volume, I could do it from right here. I don't have to come down here, click on the volume, lower it down there, because let's say your headphones don't have volume control on them. You can also mute each individual one, which I think, yeah, it's just this button up here, mutes an individual channel. You can also select where you want each channel to go. Now, this also gives you easy access to your submixes. So for my particular setup, A2 is my headphones and B3 is my stream. Let's say I'm listening to music and so is my stream. I want the music a little louder. I don't want to blow the stream's eardrums out. I just raise this knob from my own headphones. But you guys probably don't hear a difference. That's where the power lies, is you can individually adjust volumes differently for individual applications. Now, one of the biggest helpers for this, because you don't want to be fumbling around with your mouse while you're streaming and adjusting individual sliders. Kind of obnoxious. You can do it, but people like simplification. And one of the biggest tools that helps with this kind of makes this in line with a GoXLR, and I have to unplug mine to show you. But this little device, I think it cost $100, and it's a little dusty. I never clean it, and it's called the PC panel. It's a little panel with some sliders, knobs, and these knobs are clickable. And every single one of these works with Voicemeeter. And I always struggle to get it plugged back in. The USBs never want to go in the right way. You can see as I adjust, you probably can't see me adjusting the slider, but mouse is over here. You can see the slider adjusting up and down because I'm using the slider on that PC panel. Bring the software up for it. Resize that because it looks crappy. You're not going to let me resize the height? There we go. You can see as I adjust the slider, it adjusts that automatically too. You can set any of these individual strips in Voicemeeter to any one of these sliders. You can also set it to the knobs up here. And you can also assign what that clicking button does. You can set, I have mine set up to where, which knob is it? That one. So you can see in Chrome, it's muted right now. If I click it, it unmutes it. Very simple. This tool effectively makes Voicemeeter into a Go XLR. Incredibly simple. Now, I said earlier that all of the effects that are built into Voicemeeter are pretty limited, and that's true. And that's where my music is still a little loud. If you've ever done anything with audio on a PC with, I don't know, Fruity Loops, any of the major audio softwares, you've probably heard of VSTs. VSTs are plugins that most audio production software use. And they can range anything from just one little small effect to a giant like rack full of different effects. VSTs, they can, let me see if I can pull up an example. Let me see which ones I have installed. So they can be anything from like a guitar cabinet. I think I just crashed it. Give me 1 second. I'm going to try to pull this up without actually activating it. Okay. So, VSTs can be anything from this, I think it's a noise gate, if I remember right. You can see, this is why the noise gate on Voicemeeter is so limited. It gives you just one dial, whereas this one gives you threshold, attack, release, the makeup, the ratio, all that stuff that you can individually tweak to give you the best noise gate possible. I don't particularly use that one. I use what's called Reaper plugins, which if you've ever used anything music production wise, Reaper's a big name out there. But I like them because they're simple and they do a really good job for how simple they are. They have a lot of options, but you don't get a flashy interface. By the way, this program that I'm using is called Lighthost. You've probably seen tutorials on how to add VSTs into OBS, but that means if you do it that way, which does work, those VST plugins will only play through OBS. Let's say you want an equalizer to equalize your mic, no matter what program is listening to it, Discord, through your game audio, all that stuff. You always want that EQ available. That's where something like Lighthost comes in. It sits in your tray and just kind of runs, and it runs these VST plugins in the background so that no matter what device is using it, it just works. Now, you have to tell Voicemeeter that you want to use these plugins from Lighthost. Do that, go into the menu here. You'll go down to System Settings. You can see at the bottom here, there's a panel called Patch Insert. And effectively what you're doing is you're inserting these plugins into these different channels. Again, it's not easy to read, but each one of these is one of these strips. So in 1 is this very first strip. In 2 is the second one. So forth and so forth. Typically, most plugins that you're going to use are microphone plugins. So you really only need to insert on in 1. And all you do is click on them to activate them. So that means this input is now accepting VST. It's accepting an insert. And then in Lighthost, in the settings, you select your device as Voicemeeter Potato, and you want to insert channel 1. So anything that Lighthost is using will get inserted into this channel, and now your microphone has permanent voice VST plugins used on there. So now, how do I tell everything where to go on here? because it's not just going to automatically apply your game audio. Discord's not automatically going to go to this center section. Spotify is not automatically going to go here. There's two different ways. One is in the program itself, which I showed you with Discord. You have an input device and an output device. So input device means it's taking the sound from one of these outputs. This is going to get a little complicated, so try to follow me here. It takes the sound from one of these outputs and inputs it into Voicemeeter into Discord for everyone else to hear. So that's why Voicemeeter aux is, it doesn't tell you this in Voicemeeter, but Voicemeeter aux is B2. B1 is Voicemeeter VAIO. Yeah. So B1 is Voicemeeter VAIO. You'll see that in this list. Which I think it's this one, but it's cut. No, it's Voicemeeter. Right here. It's cut off, but I know that's what it is. And that would be B1. B2 is Voicemeeter aux. And then B3 is Voicemeeter VAIO 3. So because I chose aux, any sound coming out of this channel is going to go into Discord, and that's what everybody hears. Now, my output device is a little more complicated. The output device takes the sound from an output. Let me try to see how I want to explain this, because it is a little complicated. It's basically taking the sound from Discord and outputting it into this strip right here, so that you have all your control. Because this is the Voicemeeter aux strip, you have all your control over the sound that's coming out of Discord. Hopefully that makes sense, because it's a little complicated to explain. So that's how you set it in a program. You basically just choose the input and output that you want. Like I said earlier, which I think I just closed it. Sound setting. I set Voicemeeter input as my default device for Windows in general. That means out of the box, any app, any game, any program or software whatsoever will come directly into this channel. Now, then that also means that I have control over an app. Sorry. That also means that if I select B1, that anything selected on B1 will go into the game itself too. So that's how you get your microphone in. Stuff like chat. Now, the alternative method with programs like Spotify, because Spotify does not let you choose in the app itself where you want to send your audio. You have to do that in the volume mixer. Standard Windows volume mixer. So you'll scroll through this list and you can see here's Spotify. Click this little arrow down here and it chooses what device you want to output. So by selecting Voicemeeter VAIO 3, that brings it into this strip right here. And then by choosing V3, it means I'm sending it into the stream so that you guys can hear. And that's really about it. This section up here, you can pretty much ignore. This is for recording audio. So if you are recording a podcast, you can use this to record. Alternatively, you can use OBS. I prefer using OBS over this for the only real reason being familiarity. And then the special effects, I would just ignore unless you really need it, in which case I'm not equipped to explain that to you. Now, this master section down here, I touched on a little bit. We already know what these three are for. These are kind of a master of all of the A's that you've selected over here. So this is kind of a master volume just for my headphones. It also has, is it blowing your head? Yeah, I kind of expected it to a little bit, but hopefully I've explained it in a way that can help a little bit in setting it up. I'm explaining a lot of excess stuff too that most people don't really need. The main thing you really need to understand is the A1 through B3 buttons here and how these route to all of these. There's many, many different ways to set up Voicemeeter. This is just the way that works for me because it gives me the option of individually muting channels between Discord, the stream, game audio, and in my headset. So let's say right now I didn't want to listen to music, but I wanted you guys to continue listening to it. Since I just selected A2 right here, I can't hear it. All I hear is myself. Now it's awkward. So I'm going to turn that back on. But anyways, back to this master section. You have an individual volume control for your headphones right here. Shrink it down some, not full screen. Didn't tell you to do that. So this master for my headphones, because I've labeled it, you can see I've labeled it headphones, is the exact same thing, which you can't see because my fat head's in the way, is the exact same thing as this headphones line right here. As I adjust that, well, you shuffle some things around. As I adjust this, you can see that slider down there also moving. So it's 1-to-1 between these two, but this is strictly for my headphones. Now let's say I wanted to turn all my audio down because I know I'm too loud in the game. I would just turn this slider down. Or if I'm really loud in Discord, but I sound fine on the stream, I would just turn this knob down. It gives you a lot of individual controls. A lot of this excess stuff up here, you don't really need to know. I do set an EQ just for my own headphones, but that's out of pure personal preference. Most people will never do that. But other than that, you don't really need to know anything aside from these select buttons. These let you listen. They're effectively the same as these solo buttons. If I hit this, I will, I don't like hitting that because then I can hear my own mic. I hear everything that this strip, which is the one going out to the stream, hears. So by selecting that, I hear everything you guys hear. By selecting this, I would hear everything that Discord would hear, and it mutes everything that they don't hear. So it lets you monitor those individual sections. And while selected, if you change the volume of one of these knobs, it saves it. How do I explain? This is how you get to your submixes. So let's say I select, I'll do it for, let me take my microphone off of B2. Okay, so now I can adjust, let's say my mic is too loud in Discord. Because I have that selected, I can bring this down and lower it a little bit. But when I deselect it, you hear this, it's back up to the regular volume. It didn't adjust for you guys because you guys are listening to this. But anybody in Discord listening to this, that volume would have just gotten lowered. So it saves presets essentially for each input. It's kind of power user stuff. You don't have to do that. It's effectively submixes. Selecting these are how you get to your submixes. But if you're like me, you listen to what you would want to hear on stream anyways. I don't blast my music. I listen to it at the same level you guys would want to hear it. So I don't need to use submixes, but you have the option of, I want my stream to have a little bit louder music than what I'm hearing. I click that select button for the stream strip, raise the volume, deselect it, and now my volume is normal. You guys have higher volume. Hopefully that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions so far? Heights, I know you were kind of interested in setting up Voicemeeter, so I don't know if you've if I've glossed over anything that you were wondering. Some of this stuff out of the way. Not the most action-packed stream, I know. Hopefully everybody's learning a little bit from. Nobody has any questions yet? Everybody's a Voicemeeter expert. If you wonder why I'm looking over here all the time, that's where my chat is. So basically, in a nutshell, I'll kind of Barneyfy it here. You set your hardware outputs up here. Headphones, speakers. You set your software outputs, mainly starting here first. Like I said, set your default audio to Voicemeeter VAIO. That'll send all of your Windows audio, games, all that stuff into this channel. Change Discord, for me anyways, to aux, Spotify to VAIO3, just like I showed you with the volume mixer. Set your microphone over here. And that's a really basic setup. These extra ones aren't needed unless you have a need for them. I wanted to split up my Chrome audio from my Spotify. Otherwise, I would just put them both. You can put multiple stuff on the same strip. If I wanted to, let me bring back up my volume mixer. If I really wanted to, I could deselect this, make it back to what it used to be, which I guess you have to manually type it. I'm not doing that, but effectively this is now erased. But let's say I wanted Chrome to go share this with Spotify. You can definitely do that. I closed all my Chrome window. Play some audio. Yeah, for the volume mixer to actually have one of these inputs on there, it has to have recently played something. So I just played something for a second just to get Google Chrome to pop back up here. But you can see right now I have it set as cable A because that's what this was set to. But let's say I want to have it share the same as Spotify, which is using VAIO3, which always gets lost in this list for me. And now anything I play on Google Chrome will also come through here. I like having separate volumes for them because I sometimes watch a YouTube video while having music on in the background or something like that. So that's why I separate it, but it's totally up to you. And that's another good thing about Voicemeeter is it can be configured 100 different ways. It's all about experimenting and finding the way that works for you. This is just the way that works for me. A couple other things I kind of glossed over. These EQ settings I do set, but you don't have to. I find that most audio from most programs is a little flat, so I EQ it just a little bit here. This is a pan, which unless you're using speakers, if you're using speakers, you may want to use this based off of where they are. Headphones, don't touch it. This is, I think, buggy and not working the way it's supposed to. I think it's supposed to list individual programs that are assigned to this, but you can see Discord is on all three for some reason, so I don't think it works the way they want it to. I think it's a known bug. Also, some people out there that have dual PC setups, you may be wondering, how do I set that up? That's where this V-band control comes in. If you have a Go XLR, you know that you need a cable, essentially. One goes to your streaming PC, one goes to your gaming PC. With Voicemeeter, it goes over your network with almost zero latency whatsoever. To remember where that's actually set up at, because I only have, there it is. I only have a single PC setup, but for multi-PC users, you need the IP from your streaming PC. Basically, you'll send one from your gaming PC into your streaming PC. So if you're sending signal out from your gaming PC, you'll send it to the IP address of your streaming PC. And then on your streaming PC, you need the IP address from your gaming PC, and that'll basically send it through your internet from one to the other. Again, I haven't messed with it because I haven't had two PC setups. But from everything that I've read and heard and watched, it works really, really well. Almost as if it's hardwired cabled, just like a Go XLR would be. The menu system is pretty hefty. The only couple buttons you really should need to know is this restart audio engine. If for whatever reason Voicemeeter decides to bug out, you can just click that and it'll restart the app essentially. Give it a fresh start. Try to get everything back to working. If that doesn't work, close the program, reopen it, which you can do from shut down Voicemeeter. Most of your settings and the system settings you shouldn't ever have to touch. They should be set automatically. I don't understand how half of them work anyways, so I try not to touch them. Now, besides that PC panel, there are a couple things you can use to control Voicemeeter. I have, which if I can really get to it, plugged in. Nope, it's not plugged in. I have an Arturia Mini Lab, the mini one, which is a MIDI keyboard. Any MIDI keyboard can be a controller for Voicemeeter. You can see there's a MIDI mapping option to where you could set every strip and every button to be controlled by any key on a MIDI keyboard. So you can see mine, I can get it in frame, has knobs, has buttons, as well as keys. So I can set one of those knobs to be the fader for the strip one, which is my microphone. So if you don't have a PC panel, but you've got one of those laying around, you can use that as a controller. You most certainly can. And that's the cool thing about Voicemeeter is all of the options it gives you. You don't have to use all those options, but they're there for you if you want to use them. The other program that Voicemeeter, I always forget what it's called, and I should have had this up. Where are you? Macro button. There we go. You can set up macro buttons. I've never experimented with it. I think you have to do it in combination. Run macro. I don't remember how to exactly set them. I know there's plenty of tutorials out there for this, but let's say you have an extra keyboard you want to set as macro buttons. You can do that. Any one of these buttons can do anything. It can mute strip A. It can mute any one of these. It can change the select button. It can select one of these strips so you can monitor it. It could do any number of stuff. And then you can assign each one of these into a keyboard shortcut. So it gives you the option of macro buttons too, if that's what you want to use. Now I've kind of jumped around a little bit. I'm going to take this video once we're done and cut it up and make it into the VOD from this. I'm going to cut it up and make it into a video so it's a little easier to follow, because I tend to jump around a lot while I'm streaming and going over stuff like this. But hopefully this helped you kind of understand what the individual sections of Voicemeeter do, because looking out of the box, when you first downloading it doesn't give you, there's no tutorial for it other than YouTube. So a lot of people download this, look at it and say, I don't know what any of this does, and then never use it again. Whereas I think that's a mistake, because it's pretty powerful. A lot of people think they need a Go XLR, or think they need one of the new bGGn products, or need an Elgato microphone so they can get the Wavelink software. They all do effectively the same thing. Some do more, some do less, but they all have the same capabilities in them to do this stuff. I think Voicemeeter comes. He stopped driving. Yeah, don't type while you're dropping. Did you have any questions, dude? I don't know if you were really listening since you were driving. I remember you saying in Discord you had some questions about Voicemeeter setup. But where these differ from a Go XLR and Wavelink and even the bGGn stuff is the amount of options it gives you. You can set up way more devices, way more inputs and outputs than what most of those other programs and hardware allow you to do. I think my chat's a little bit delayed. I need to see if I can get into the YouTube settings and change my stream delay. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I forgot. The one annoying thing, and I've submitted numerous feedback forms about this, and Voicemeeter is aware and they've designed it this way. You can't resize this window. It is what it is. I wish you could, because it is a little big and bulky and you can't really move it over vertical monitors and have it work properly. But this is the way they designed it and the way they want it. Oh, one of the other cool things. I recommend this over like, even if personally, yes, but that's because I've gotten used to using Voicemeeter. And I've found, I haven't used Wavelink myself, but I know people that have. And all I've heard from them is how buggy Wavelink can be. Stuff just doesn't want to work sometimes, which Voicemeeter has that problem as well. Voicemeter is not a perfect software. I would say it's worth trying and seeing if you can use it. And I think one of the biggest benefits that it has is that it can be controlled with other devices like the PC panel, which I don't think you were here when I showed this off, and I think you said you have one of these. It can be controlled by this. So you can turn this into a mixer for whatever sliders and faders and buttons you want. So I'd say it's worth trying. I wouldn't say it's better necessarily. Wavelink, I think, has better VST support. This does have VST support, obviously, but I think it's integrated more into Wavelink than Voicemeeter does. Voicemeter relies on third-party software for it to work, whereas Wavelink, it's kind of built in. At least I think it is now. I know they were talking about. The other cool thing that Voicemeeter had, which I've never used this, but I could see it being super useful for podcasts, is their walkie-talkie feature, which sounds gimmicky, I know. However, it turns any phone into a Voicemeeter strip. So right now it runs OBS audio headphones. Yeah, so what you could do is set up that PC panel so it controls everything in Voicemeeter. That way, even if you don't have OBS open, it can adjust all your audio whichever way you want. So it would do everything, essentially, rather than just OBS audio. But this walkie-talkie system, effectively, it turns any cell phone into a microphone for Voicemeeter, which is great for podcasts because not everybody has good microphones, but everybody has pretty decent cell phones. Never tried it, so I don't know how well it works, but it's a pretty cool option that they give to people. But yeah, if you have a PC panel, that turns Voicemeeter into effectively the Go XLR Mini. That makes sense. Without the audio interface built into it. Let me get this plugged back in and I'll show you. And I'm curious, anybody watching, what do you use? Do you use Voicemeeter? Do you use just the audio mixer in OBS? Do you use Wavelink, GoXLR, all that stuff? Curious what everybody's using. So I got my PC panel plugged back in. So you can see heights. I've got Spotify on this channel. S4 is what I've assigned to it, because in the settings for the PC panel, there is a Voicemeeter option. I don't remember how to get to... Oh, I think you have to double click on... I don't remember how to change this. I haven't done it in so long. There it goes. You double click on the fader. And then in the Voicemeeter section, I choose input 8, because this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and number 8. And I wanted it to control the gain. So as I adjust this slider, it adjusts the gain strip number 8. If I wanted this knob, control it, just double click the knob, go to Voicemeeter. Let's say I want it to mute input 8. Make sure I'm on button and not knob. Click OK. And now whenever I click this knob, it mutes it and unmutes it. So rather than configuring this to work with multiple different programs, you configure it to work with just Voicemeeter, and then you're done. Now, so I've got B3 set up, which is B3 equates to VAIO3. But I've got B3 set up to output all my stream audio. That means in OBS, I only have one audio input, and that's Voicemeeter VAIO3, which is all this input. So all of my audio mixing is done from here, not from OBS. OBS has one volume slider in it, which is effectively the same as this slider. Now, let's say you're not streaming, but you do YouTube videos, or any other kind of videos, really. So you don't need a stream section. You could set it up to where all of your game audio is output to B1, all of your Discord audio is output to B2, all of your microphone to B3, and that way you have individual outputs of individual audio. So in your audio software, you can assign each one of those and have separate tracks for all three of them. Like I said, there's multiple different ways this can be set up. The best thing you can do is just sit down and experiment with it. My setup is kind of made for streaming, but there is no one definitive way to set up Voicemeeter. Anybody else have any questions? And this is my very first kind of tutorialized stream. So hopefully future ones, I didn't even know you had to hit go live on YouTube before it would start streaming. So hopefully future ones it will go a little smoother, but I got caught off guard by that. It set me all off. All right. Well, if nobody else has anything, I think that's gonna do it for me. Like I said, I'm gonna cut the VOD of this up and kind of make it into a setup video. If you're interested in Voicemeeter, you've probably watched a couple other videos before, so you know what the interface does. So that's why I'm going to kind of work on a setup video for streamers specifically, because that's how I've set mine up. So be on the lookout for that. Kate, do we know what topic we're going to cover in episode number 2 of 4 Nerds by Nerds? Yeah, I gotta get rid of the stream delay. Sit here waiting on answers. Ooh, my beard is going all over the place. Why didn't y'all tell me? I know you had some ideas and some stuff you wanted to do, and Heights also wanted to. But we'll figure something out. Maybe even I'll do the stab at the next one. Sorry, we're going by the seat of our pants here. But thank you everybody for stopping in and watching. We'll be doing plenty more of these. Heck, maybe we'll even jump in sometimes and do some gaming. Be on the lookout for that video. It should be up hopefully within the week. We'll see how my daytime job schedule goes. But yeah, that's all I've really got. If you have any more questions about this, and if you're in our Discord, feel free to shoot me a DM. I'll be happy to help you kind of figure some things out and set things up. Don't get overwhelmed by Voicemeeter. Take some time and learn it, because it's a super powerful software that I think anybody can make use of. Even if you're already using something else, it's worth trying. But until the next episode, I guess that's it for me. Have a good day, guys.